Okay, this video is going to be several little mini parts just to avoid a really long video. This is the MegaMan X3 fully playable zero mod board by Retro Circuits. It's a 4 megabyte mod. CX4 is only 2 megabytes, so this extra circuitry is to enable the mod to run. So the only thing that I need to call out is that these are low profile socket pins, as you can see. I'm going to put this one in a socket, even though all the others I've made in the past are soldered in. This one, these are just real low profile sockets. I picked these up a long time ago. I have no idea where you'd get them, but this is how they come. So, yeah, pretty cool. So anyway, so that's a caveat that, you know, this board would not come with these pins. Those are ones I just added. So anyways, the idea of this mod is this grafts onto, you know, this, you know, board, the Japanese X3 board. And so we've got a couple of things we're going to prep for first. First one is we're going to scrape off some of the solder masking for the anchor point. So it's right up here by the battery. So I'm just going to take my tweezers, which are kind of like a scribe, and just going to make a little circle there. That'll give me a good reference of where, you know, to scrape away the solder mask. So again, it's just an anchor point to keep everything from flexing or moving. So, you know, I'll take a razor blade and, you know, I'll just scrape this part away. And then as the build goes on, we'll solder to this as an anchor point. So other anchor points on the board we'll be using is this one, and this one over here. So I've taken the electrolytic capacitor off here and I replaced it with a ceramic. I have seen the electrolytics leak, and it's just been a common practice of mine to replace these, just no matter what. So, and then here is a finished version of the board. So, and then I've got some battery tests. You know, I did this one back in 2020. And the battery is 3.279. And then 21, I took a reading. And then today, I took a reading. February 2024. Yeah, it's close enough to February. Anyways, you know, 3.186. So, you know, between, you know, this value and these dates, you know, give you a pretty good idea of the life expectancy of the battery. So anyways, but yeah, 4 years, it's, or 3.5 years, it's, you know, gone down very little, so that's good. And so the, obviously there's a surface mount battery here. We're going to solder all these little pins here. And then you can see that we're going to do some little capacitor legs or resistor legs, you know, that I just have some real thin resistors that I just use just for the legs. You know, we'll just do that. We'll do this. There's one down here. This is kind of more of an anchor point than needing power. But you can see the anchor points, you know, here, there, and here, you know, being used. And then we have to run these two little wires up here. And then the tricky part of this whole thing is getting this connection right here. So on this one, this connection is this kind of goes nowhere trace. It's this one right here. just goes right, you know, to this hole. And so we're gonna scrape the solder mask off of this, and then the adapter, this little part of the adapter here is, you know, we're gonna solder on. So when this lays over, then that, you know, if you get it all lined up right, then that should, you know, line up with that trace. You know, I'm just holding my hands. I'm not, you know, so that alignment of that, along with the alignment of, you know, these, you know, and these, you know, is all kind of critical at this stage. And then once you get that lined up, then you can just tack maybe one anchor point, ones that are easy to undo, you know, like this one here, or this one here, in case you need to move it. So anyway, so we're going to remove the ROM, and we're going to remove this capacitor. And I'm going to pause the video and we'll get that done, then I'll come back with that. All right, so I have removed the ROM and the capacitor with my hot air station. And also you want to test the cart, you know, in your console. Make sure it works before you do anything. I already did that. And so this video is intended for someone who has the skills and the tools. They don't need to be told how to orient a chip or how to solder something. So my next step is I'm going to take some adhesive labels. I'm going to cut some strips. You know, I just want to make sure, absolutely sure, that there are no shorts, you know, between, you know, this, you know, and this. So I'm just going to put a little bit of tape over this, and just out of an abundance of caution, I'll probably put some over these traces and things. So, you know, the back of the board does have a pretty thick solder. It's like a silk barrier, but you know, it's not perfect. So anyways, I'm not going to take the chance, so I'm going to do that, and I'll come back for the next video. Okay, I got a little piece of label tape here. You know, this point is where a bunch of vias go through, and so I'm just putting a piece of tape here, just that little, you know, fraction of a millimeter, you know, barrier that kind of, you know, doesn't let this sit completely flat against, you know, the donor, is all I'm after. And I still need to put a piece on this, over this capacitor, because that capacitor is not covered in solder mask. It is bare copper, which is the greatest danger of any kind of potential shorts. And so I'm just going to put this over the top of it. And then if you notice, I scrape the solder mask off of that point there that we're going to solder to later. So that's about all you need, and you don't want to get the solder mask off of the adjacent lines. You definitely want to be careful not to bridge anything. So, okay, on to the next. Okay, this next step in this process is I went ahead and aligned everything and got my anchor point kind of to hold everything in place. So I just wanted to show that, you know, it may not be a perfect alignment with this row here, and that's okay, because the critical alignment is these little half-hole vias, the castellated holes with the pads on the board. Those being aligned, and this little guy being aligned, that's your main concern. So I'm going to put a little piece of silver tape on the back where that hole is. Yeah, so this hole right here. Just going to put a little piece of tape here to keep the solder from rolling through it, soaking through. Now, you know, if you mess this up, it's not the end of the world. I mean, this is pin number 25. So you could, you know, if your skills allow it, you could, you know, tap onto pin 25 and just solder it to this little anchor point here. Not anchor point, just a square pad. And so, you know, it's not the end of the world if this little trace, you know, doesn't happen. The one thing I am going to do, though, is I'm going to cover this little pad so that the solder will have a tendency to, I don't know, blob up, soak up, you know, on that pad instead of, you know, living in this little half hole. So I'm just going to keep the solder from building up on top, and I want it to go down. So, okay, so anyways, I'm only going to do one anchor point. I might go ahead and do this one, just to make doubly sure I'm not going to move, nothing's going to move around, and then we'll, let's do that now. And then I'm going to make my next set of connections. So these connections are pretty easy to make. You definitely don't want to bridge across the, I guess that's a ferrite bead, FB. But, you know, you should be able to, you know, just solder across it. Here, let me clean that up. All right, so see if I can zoom in on this a little bit better. So, you know, you should be able to just kind of, you know, zoom in, or not zoom in, you know, just solder these. Okay, and so on. Again, this is just more of an overview of how to do it. If you don't have the skills or the tools, then you probably should not do this. So anyways, I'll clean those up. Those look terrible actually, but you get the idea. So I'm going to bridge these, and then, you know, like the example, I'm going to, you know, I've got, you know, some resistor legs that, you know, pennies a piece, and, you know, I'm going to push them through this via. I think these vias are big enough where this leg goes through. You know, so I'll go in, I'll bend it over, I'll go in here, I'll bend it over. And so let's just, I'm going to do that off camera, because for me to get my head close enough, it would block the camera anyway. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be back in a minute. So instead of doing this off camera, I'm going to try and do some of this on camera. This part here, I'm going to use kind of I think they call it the drag technique, you know, where, you know, you just drag your iron and the solder. And so let me see if I can do this on camera. My eyes are so bad that usually I have these giant magnifiers on my head, but the drag technique should, you know, you should just be able to, you know, drag your iron and the solder across, you know, so you can see that, you know, this first half, you know, looks pretty good, but this other half, you know, we'll have to work on a little bit more. Flux wouldn't be a bad idea, you know, to use. Try not to use too much flux, even though that kind of goes against, you know, conventional wisdom, but my solder has quite a bit of flux in it already, so you know, so there's a little bit better, you know, example of drag soldering. So I need to take care of this little bridge down here, you know. So anyway, so that's drag soldering, and so we'll do the other side, and then I'll move on off camera to do the rest of it. So sometimes, you know, tilting the board also in drag soldering helps. You know, let gravity help you out. So, and you know, I'm not much of a cameraman, so I'll just have to bear with me with the bad angles and all that. Talk my son into coming up here and doing the camera work for me. So, all right, that doesn't look too bad. Anyways, you know, alignment is critical, and these are such fragile pads that if you were to flex this board, you could probably rip those pads right up real easy, and then you've got a real problem. And so, but yeah, those look pretty good. I'm gonna take a closer look with my magnifier and make sure they're all pretty sturdy, and then I'll be back to after I do these other connections. You can see that, you know, these solder legs, you know, go in, just go in these little vias, and so just an example. So this one here is gonna, you know, it's gonna bend over there, and then I'm just gonna cut it, and then this one is just an extra source of power, so it's not critical that this one may be made, but you know, why not? So okay, so I've got these two points done, and then I went ahead and added one for power. Again, this can be considered optional. It's already getting power from up here and in here, so you know, but you know, you've got this whole space here that's not really anchored down except to here. And so I like putting this little extra bit of power, and it provides a pretty good anchor point for this kind of corner. All right, so now we're going to do this little spot here. And again, I am not anchoring this down with the anchors here or here yet. These will be the very last after I've tested it and everything works. So what's left is I need to solder this point here, and then I need to run the two lines from this point to here, this point to here, and so I'll cut away and do that one here in a minute, but let's do this one first real quick. So this should be enough for a connection. So if it's connected, then we will get continuity. So I got my multimeter here, and we're going to do a quick continuity test. So, all right, so this is pin 25, and this right here should have continuity with pin 25. So 1, 2, 3, 24, 25. I don't. So, okay, well, good thing we did a continuity test. Okay, so I need to look at this a little closer here. So, all right, try that again. And that is by far the most delicate and difficult connection. And again, I don't want it to pool up on this square pad, so I'm gonna put the tape back over it. So, okay, let's see here. Let's try this again. Okay, well, here, not getting continuity. So I probably misaligned it, which is easy to do. Or maybe I even broke the trace. So yeah, the trace is so I think it's just a misalignment. So see if I can get it over there. Okay. Yeah, this is probably the biggest design issue I have is when I apply solder, it just wants to keep building up on this little top pad. I should have solder masked this. But let's see if we can't get there. All right, so we may have to come back to this and do the wire jumper. Yeah, no. Yeah, this was an alignment issue on my part. And unfortunately, this is the most critical connection of this deal, because if this connection isn't made properly, then it will not work at all. And so, anyway, all right, I'm gonna have to come back to that. Let me get the rest of these connections made. Okay, so what I wound up doing was taking a resistor and folding it over that curve. It's kind of hard to see with this, with the flux and all that, but I took the resistor and I put it on the trace, and then I folded it over, you know, and mounted it to the pad. And so, so now, you know, when I touch this and this, see, I got good continuity. And I should only get continuity one pin. There shouldn't be any cross connections, which there are not. So, okay, so that part's done. I'll just, you know, cut this. I'll just cut this leg off here, and then I am going to do my best not to flex this part. And again, and that is why this anchor point's here, and why this one's here, is to keep this from flexing at all. So, anyways, it's and I got some solder mask, or the flux residue, but clean a little bit of that. But, and it's not the end of the world, you know, if that connection's not made. I mean, your game won't work without it, but you can always run a jumper, you know, from here to, you know, pin 25 as it says. So, so anyways, so, you know, if you're troubleshooting, if you've done this build or doing this build, this is the first place I would check. Make sure that that pad makes continuity to, you know, pin 25. So, okay, back a little bit. Okay, so I clean that spot up, and so you can get a better idea what I did. I just put that leg of the resistor and it being, you know, held down by that big pad, you know, so it doesn't move. Then the bottom part of that leg, resistor leg, you know, made the connection. So I might actually want to solder over that one more time, but on the other hand, you know, may want to leave well enough alone. So anyways, all right, so that's again, that's the most critical part of the build, is getting that connection. So the next part is running these little wires, you know, from these pads here down to here. Now, what you're going to want to do is, if you look at this real close, you'll see that the solder pads, or the fingers, have this little extra part of, you know, masked over. So we're gonna scrape away these, you know, the ones that we need, and then we're gonna put a piece of tape like this. Okay, so we're gonna scrape away the two we need, and the tape is to keep the solder from, you know, wicking, you know, down. We want to keep these gold, you know, connections gold. We don't want them to turn into solder, which is a very bad connection. So I'm gonna scrape away the appropriate pads, and then we'll do the jumpers. Okay, so I've never actually done this before, but I thought, you know, this is heat shrink, and it's just a little tube. It's the most narrow tube I can find. So, you know, you just don't want this wire shorting to any of the neighboring wires. And although I've never used heat shrink for this purpose before, seems like a pretty good idea. So, so we'll see how it goes. I'm going to push it down with this razor. Okay, so so that turned out, really well, I think, and the the gold fingers didn't get solder wicked. The heat shrink looks like a pretty good insulator. It is a good insulator. This one just goes around. So, all right. So the only thing I have left to do is put the ROM up here, my sockets, so I can test it. The socket really for me is a dual purpose. It's so if there's any upgrades or newer versions, I'll be able to test them. So, I mean, you would not ordinarily need a socket, for this, but and the interesting little factoid is that the ROM, it's a 16-bit ROM, and this is, an 8-bit game, and but the way this works is half of the ROM, is one side of the CX4, and the other half of the ROM's on the, CX4 side. And so the 16-bit ROM is interleaved with both, with the game program, so that, when it's accessed, it, half of the data lines go, over here, and the other half goes over here, and it seemed like a pretty clever solution, as opposed to having two separate ROMs, which ordinarily you would need. So, but yeah, it wound up being very simple, very effective, with a minimal amount of parts, just 2 parts. Well, 3 with the SRAM, but you to see some of the earlier builds. Woo. So, okay, let me burn this ROM, and then we'll get back to testing it. Okay, got the ROM burned, and it's in place. Again, I haven't done my anchors yet. Those will be last, so after. And then, of course, I need to put the battery on as well. So that is the last step. So, there we go. That's my very, very messy desk. Okay. I could probably need to clean my edges here. Yep. All right, come on. My controller not working. There we go. So new game. So what you're going to want to do is play a game, and then you have to get past the first level. Oh, come on. Seriously, need to clean my buttons on my controller. So you get past this, and then it'll ask you if you want to save, and then it'll ask you what save slot to use, and then save it, and then go back, turn it off, remove the cartridge, go back and make sure your save is still there. Since I don't have a battery mounted, it's, it wouldn't save, but anyway, so this is the fully playable 0 mod for the X3. I do have one for the X2, but it's a little more complicated than this one. And so, But yeah, this if I'm going to do on the X3s, on the you can do the mod on an X2 donor, but it's a little more involved than this one. So anyway, so again, off camera, I'm gonna go ahead and do the anchor point here, and in the corner, I'll mount the battery, and then it'll be good to go, just like this one. So, all right, well, that's it.